The emergency lights in the Galaxy Council chamber didn't flash. They didn't need to. 500 delegates sat in a room made of crystal and star metal, and every one of them was staring at the same thing. A blue world, small and bright on the central hologram, with a shadow moving across it like a bruise. "Confirmed source of the distortion," the High Chancellor said. His voice was old enough to make even the air feel heavy. The observer at the sensor dais swallowed. Gravitic shear at the edge of the Sol system. Translation wake. Multiple. How many? A pause. The kind that stretched a little too long. 412 hull signatures, the observer said, and his hands shook as he adjusted the feed. Designation matches the Caris Dominion. A ripple moved through the chamber. Quiet, controlled, educated discomfort. Nobody screamed. Nobody gasped. But dozens of pupils dilated. Some gills fluttered. A few species went very still, the way prey did when it realized the predator had already chosen it. 400 ships didn't mean a raid. It meant an example. The hologram sharpened, magnifying the outer edge of the Sol system. A pale yellow star burned at center. Around it, planets circled in patient silence. The third one, Earth, glowed with white cloud bands and blue oceans, the kind of planetary beauty that made diplomats write poetry and generals write invasion plans. The Caris Dominion fleet didn't approach in a neat line. It arrived like an axe falling. Their ships bled in from folded space in staggered wedges, engines flaring crimson as they stabilized. The largest vessels were city-sized, built like hard-edged knives, each one bristling with weapon spines and heat vents. Smaller destroyers swarmed around them in disciplined patterns, shifting formation with mechanical precision. Even from this distance, the Dominion's confidence was visible. They weren't hiding. They weren't cautious. They were performing. A young delegate, Novari, if the crest markers were correct, leaned forward until her shoulders almost touched the display. "They didn't even mask the translation wakes," she whispered, more curious than afraid. "They want us to watch." The High Chancellor's gaze remained fixed on Earth. "We are watching," he said. "That is why this chamber exists." A few of the older species made subtle motions, signs of discomfort or old memory. At the side table where the observation committee sat, a Verthari historian tapped his stylus against his data slate. He had 6 eyes, and all of them were focused on the live feed with a scholar's hunger. "This is unprecedented," he murmured. "A full Dominion invasion, in Council-recorded space." "It is not Council space," another delegate corrected automatically. "Earth is unregistered." "Unregistered," the historian repeated, amused. Such a tidy word for a world full of 8 billion breathing variables. The High Chancellor lifted one hand. The murmur died. "Council of Species," he said, and the chamber listened the way a planet listened to gravity. "This is an emergency session. The Caris Dominion has initiated hostile action against a pre-contact civilization designated Sol 3, local name Earth. We have 2 questions to settle." He paused, letting every mind lean in. "First, what is the state of humanity?" Another pause. "And second, do we intervene?" A crystalline delegate from Zenthara shimmered, sending light through the chamber like a nervous laugh. "Intervene for what purpose?" it asked, voice chiming. "To protect them? To punish the Dominion? Or to preserve our own protocols?" The High Chancellor didn't answer immediately. He didn't have to. The central hologram shifted, and a new layer of data unfolded around Earth. Lines of text, hazard markers, treaty classifications, and assessment stamps. A professional voice filled the chamber. Calm, clipped, neutral. Galaxy Council Xenostudies brief. Sol 3, Humanity. Status: Pre-FTL. Interstellar presence: none detected. The words hung there, simple and devastating. Fragmented governance, the voice continued. Over 200 sovereign political entities. High internal conflict frequency. Resource extraction economy. Chemical propulsion dominant. Orbital infrastructure minimal. A delegate from the RUL syndicate made a sound like contempt. They still burn hydrocarbons, he said. Primitive. Continue, the High Chancellor ordered. Military capability, the brief voice said. Planet-bound. Nuclear weapons present. No confirmed energy shield technology. No confirmed faster-than-light communication. Psych profile, high aggression variability, high risk tolerance, emotionally bonded group behavior, unpredictable escalation potential. Overall classification, interesting but doomed. The last phrase was not in the voice's usual neutral tone. It was added by a human researcher. No one commented on that. They didn't know. The Kharis Dominion fleet advanced through the outer system. The holofeed zoomed to track them. They moved past frozen rocks, past thin drifting dust, past the slow, cold orbit of distant planets. Their formation was clean and arrogant, the kind of symmetry that said the Dominion believed the universe was supposed to obey. Dominion doctrine, an Altarian strategist said quietly. His skin was the pale blue of deep-water ice, and his fingers were clasped as if in prayer. They open with orbital dominance, sever communications, demonstrate power, then force surrender. A Novari delegate blinked. Will humans surrender? The Altarian didn't respond at first. He watched the feed the way someone watched a storm approach a village that didn't know what weather was. Most species surrender when they see the sky burn, he said finally. Most. A few delegates chuckled softly. Academic amusement, not cruelty. Even if they don't, the RUL Syndicate delegate said, they will be shattered in hours. They have no fleet. The Verthari historian made a small correction without looking away. They have satellites, he said. Thousands. Communication arrays, weather monitoring, orbiting debris. Debris, the RUL delegate repeated, dismissive. The central hologram flickered again. A new panel appeared, showing a Dominion flagship's bridge, an internal feed the Council's long-range spies had acquired years ago. It was grainy and delayed, but the image was clear enough. Towering Kharis officers with plated hides and ceremonial scars, moving with the stiff, confident grace of conquerors. A Dominion admiral stood at the front, tall even for his species, armor etched with conquest tallies. His mouth opened, and the translator rendered his speech in crisp Council common. Approach vector confirmed, he said. Sol, 3 within firing range in 4 Dominion hours. No detected orbital defense platforms. A subordinate bowed. Scans confirm pre-FTL civilization. Atmospheric flight present. Radio leakage significant. They broadcast entertainment into open space. A low laugh moved through the Dominion bridge. Entertainment. The galaxy had thousands of years of history with that word. Entire cultures had been defined by what they sang when they weren't afraid. The Dominion admiral's eyes narrowed. Psychological instability species, he said. They fight among themselves constantly. Correct, the subordinate said. War frequency high. They appear unable to unify. The admiral's lip curled. Good. Then we will give them something worth unifying against. On the Council Chamber's observation dais, a Zenthara crystal being shimmered again. He speaks like a researcher, it chimed, fascinated. Not like a general. He is both, the Altarian strategist murmured. That's how empires survive. The High Chancellor's gaze never left Earth. The feed cut back to Sol's inner system. Dominion ships slid past a gas giant, its storms swirling like bruises beneath them. Their engines left red lines in the dark. Council law, the High Chancellor said, voice quiet but carrying. Non-interference with pre-contact civilizations. No direct aid. No direct harm. Observation only. A younger delegate raised a hand, Novari again, unable to contain curiosity. But the Dominion is interfering, she said. They are about to commit extinction. Earth is unregistered, someone answered, and the words were practiced. Not under Council protection. Which is a failure of bureaucracy, the Novari said, frustration rising. Not a moral defense. A few delegates shifted. A few avoided eye contact. The High Chancellor turned slightly, just enough to acknowledge the room. "We are not here to debate morality," he said. "We are here to prevent a war between member species." "Between who?" the RUL delegate scoffed. "Humans aren't a member species. They're barely a footnote." The Verthari historian finally looked away from the feed. All 6 eyes blinked in slow succession. "Footnotes sometimes become chapters," he said. The RUL delegate waved a hand dismissively. "They have no interstellar presence." "None detected," the historian corrected. The chamber absorbed that difference like a drop of poison. The Dominion fleet reached the edge of Earth's moon's orbit. From here, Sol 3 filled their forward displays as a full world. Clouds, oceans, night lights glowing faintly on the dark side. The Council's hologram zoomed further, highlighting those night lights, clusters like bioluminescent algae across a planet's surface. "Cities," the Zenthra delegate chimed softly, almost tender. "They build so densely." The Dominion Admiral's voice came through the intercepted bridge feed again. "Open channel," he ordered. A communications officer keyed a console. A burst of electromagnetic noise filled the Council chamber's audio system. Then a voice, human, strained, speaking in broken Council common, the translator laboring. "Unknown vessels," the voice said. "This is Earth Defense Command. We request peaceful contact. Please respond with intentions." The Dominion bridge erupted in laughter. It wasn't joyous. It was the sound of someone stepping on something smaller. The Admiral lifted a hand, silencing them. "Transmit," he said. His voice, when it came through, was slow and sharp. "This is Admiral Carvos of the Caris Dominion. We claim your world. You will surrender authority immediately. Failure will result in planetary correction." "Planetary correction," the Verthari historian whispered. "Such a clean phrase for mass death." The human voice returned, and this time it sounded confused. Not terrified. Not submissive. Confused, like someone had been told the sun was being repossessed. "We do not understand your claim," the human said. "You are in violation of..." The translator stumbled over the next words. "International law." The Dominion bridge laughed again. Even in the Council chamber, a few delegates made involuntary noises, amused disbelief. "International law," as if the universe cared. The Dominion Admiral leaned forward, eyes hard. "You have 1 hour," he said. "At the end of that time, we will demonstrate." He cut the channel with a flick of his hand. In the Council chamber, the Novari delegate hugged her arms, suddenly aware of her own skin. "They asked for time," she whispered. "They always ask for time," the Altarian strategist said. "Time to beg. Time to pray. Time to panic." The High Chancellor spoke again, and his voice was softer now, like wine through dead leaves. "Record everything," he said. "If this world dies, history will at least remember how." The Council's long-range sensors shifted, focusing on Earth's surface. On the hologram, tiny markers appeared, communication spikes, satellite alignment changes, radio bandwidth surges. "They're broadcasting," an observer said. "To each other." "How many separate command centers?" the High Chancellor asked. The observer hesitated. "We cannot isolate a single one. Signals originate from thousands of locations." "Fragmented," the RUL delegate said with satisfaction. "As predicted." The Altarian strategist watched the signal map and frowned. "Or distributed," he murmured. "What is the difference?" the Novari asked. The strategist didn't answer right away. He watched the spikes grow. "Fragmented means they can't cooperate," he said at last. "Distributed means you can't decapitate them." Silence followed that statement, the kind of silence that made even confident species feel slightly smaller. The hour began. On Earth, night lights shifted as power grids surged. The Council sensors showed a sudden increase in traffic. Vehicles, aircraft, heat signatures. "They're mobilizing," the Verthari historian said, delighted. "Look at the pattern. They're moving toward coasts, toward high ground, Toward nowhere, the RUL delegate interrupted. They have nothing that can reach orbit. Not if they follow our assumptions, the Altarian strategist said. On the Dominion flagship, the Admiral paced. His subordinate offered him a data cube. Human communications, the subordinate said. They are contacting every government on their world. The Admiral snorted. How many governments can one primitive planet have? Over 200, the subordinate said. They are arguing. Some propose surrender. Some propose resistance. Some propose. Typical, the Admiral said. They cannot unify. The subordinate's claws hovered over the cube. But they are all issuing the same directive to their populations. The Admiral paused. Which is? The subordinate swallowed. Prepare. That single word traveled through the council chamber and landed like a stone in water. Prepare. Not plead. Not pray. Prepare. The hour ended. The Dominion Admiral stood still, as if savoring the moment. Then he spoke with calm authority. Demonstration strike, he ordered. Target an uninhabited landmass. Minimal casualties. Maximum terror. The council chamber's observation feed zoomed to Earth's western ocean. An island, small, green, ringed by white surf, appeared in the hologram. Uninhabited, the Dominion scanner labeled it. The weapon charge built on the Dominion flagship like a rising sun of heat. A few delegates in the council chamber leaned forward. Others leaned back, as if distance could soften what was coming. Fire, the Dominion Admiral said. 3 plasma lances streaked from space toward Earth. They burned lines through vacuum, then flared brighter as they hit atmosphere, carving molten scars across the sky. On Earth, the Council sensors detected something they hadn't expected. A sudden bloom of energy from the island. Wait, the observer said. That's... Beams shot upward from the surface. Not weak, scattered light. Tight, coherent streams, climbing fast. 2 of the plasma lances detonated midair, torn apart by precise counterfire. The third struck the island. But instead of turning it into a crater, it splashed against a shimmering dome, an energy field that rippled like disturbed water. The council chamber went quiet in a different way. Not controlled academic silence. This was the silence of people who had just watched a dead man blink. The Dominion flagship's bridge feed crackled with alarm. Defensive fire detected, the communications officer reported. Energy profile, advanced. The Admiral's head snapped toward the tactical display. Impossible, he said, and for a moment his voice lost its polish. In the council chamber, the Verthari historian's eyes widened one by one, as if his body needed time to accept what his mind had already seen. That was not Pre-FTL, he whispered. The RUL delegate stared at the hologram, mouth slightly open. The Altarian strategist didn't look surprised. He looked sick. Scan the island, the Dominion Admiral barked. The subordinate's claws flew over controls. The island was not uninhabited, she reported. It's a military installation. Shield generators. Weapon platforms. Stealth masking. Our sensors did not detect it. The Admiral's plated jaw tightened. How many more? He demanded. Unknown. Unknown, the Admiral repeated, and it sounded like an insult. In the council chamber, the Novari delegate whispered. They lied. Or we believed a lie, the High Chancellor said. His voice carried no anger. Only wait. On the hologram, more markers appeared across Earth's surface. Energy signatures, shield flickers, weapon platforms rising from hidden bunkers, ocean surfaces parting as structures broke through. It wasn't a world with no defenses. It was a world with no defenses visible. The Dominion Admiral stared at his tactical display like it had betrayed him. We are receiving a transmission, his communications officer said. Put it through, the Admiral snapped. A human voice came across the channel. Clear, calm, speaking perfect council common without hesitation. This is Earth, it said. We have discussed your demands. The Dominion Admiral leaned forward, eyes narrowing. And, he said. Our answer is no. 2 words. Not dramatic. Not shouted. Not wrapped in pride. Just a fact, delivered the way you delivered the weather. The Dominion Admiral's nostrils flared. Then your species will be corrected, he said. If you want our world, Earth replied, voice still calm. Come and take it. The channel cut. In the council chamber, someone made a small sound, a Zenthra chiming note that could have been awe or fear. The High Chancellor's fingers tightened on the edge of his platform. Assess, he ordered quietly. The observer swallowed. Human orbital traffic is increasing, he said. But not from launch. What do you mean, not from launch? The RUL delegate demanded. The observer's hands shook as he magnified the sensor feed. New contacts appeared on the hologram. At first, a few. Then dozens. Then hundreds. They blinked into existence from behind the moon, from within Earth's shadow, from the dark side of debris fields, from places that had looked empty seconds earlier. No burn trails. No launch arcs. They had been there. All ships. The Dominion Admiral's voice echoed through his bridge feed, suddenly sharp. Identify those contacts. The subordinate's report came back thin and tight. They are human ships. The Dominion Admiral stared. The council chamber stared with him. The human ships didn't look uniform. Some were sleek, angular, clearly military. Others were bulky, uneven, like retrofitted cargo carriers. A few were small craft clustered in swarms. There were civilian hulls with weapon pods welded onto their sides. There were ships that looked old, patched, scarred, but moving with purpose. They armed their civilians, the Alterian strategist whispered. The Verthari historian's stylus slipped from his fingers and clattered on the table. He didn't pick it up. This is astonishing, he breathed. A hidden interstellar presence. A distributed defense network. They were never pre-FTL. The RUL delegate's voice came out strained. They were listed as pre-FTL, he insisted, as if arguing with reality could make it behave. They were labeled pre-FTL, the High Chancellor corrected, and there was something in his tone now, a hint of coldness. There is a difference. On the Dominion Bridge feed, the Admiral's confidence fractured. It didn't shatter. He was too trained for that. But it cracked enough that everyone could see the stress underneath. We outnumber them, he said, though he no longer sounded sure. His subordinate hesitated. Admiral, we do not have an accurate count. The Admiral's jaw clenched. Get me an estimate. The subordinate's eyes flicked across the tactical readout. Thousands, she said. The word hit the chamber like impact. Thousands. A few delegates in the council chamber exchanged quick looks, the kind that said, we have made a miscalculation so large it has become a new reality. The Dominion Admiral's hand tightened on the railing. Attack formation, he ordered, voice harsher now, like he needed sound to hold his authority together. Prepare. He stopped, because the humans did something no sane fleet did. They didn't form a line. They didn't advance in a wedge. They didn't cluster around a flagship like disciples around a prophet. They spread. They flowed into the black like spilled ink, appearing from angles that made no tactical sense. They rose above the system plane. They dropped below it. They drifted near asteroids. They hid behind moons. They used the entire solar system as a battlefield, not a stage. This is chaos, the Dominion captain on screen said, disgusted. And the Alterian strategist in the council chamber whispered, almost to himself, no. His eyes tracked the pattern. It's not chaos, he said. It's refusal. The Novari delegate turned toward him, confused. Refusal of what? Refusal to fight by rules they didn't write, the strategist said. The Dominion's first destroyers opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked forward, bright and lethal. The human ships did not respond with matching plasma. They responded with movement. They dodged with sudden acceleration, twisting in arcs that would have liquefied most species. Small ships peeled away in impossible turns. Larger ships used debris as cover. A cargo freighter slid sideways behind a rock the size of a city and vanished from Dominion targeting. Then something else happened. The Council sensors registered impacts, not energy blooms, but tiny, fast kinetic strikes. Metal. Slugs. Micrometeor swarms fired with intention. The Dominion shields flared as they tried to adapt to energy frequencies that weren't there. A destroyer's hull punched inward as if it had been bitten by invisible teeth. On the Dominion bridge feed, an officer shouted, "We're taking hull breaches, no thermal signature, projectiles." "How are they penetrating shields?" the Admiral roared. The subordinate's voice came tight with fear. "Our shields are tuned for energy dispersion. These projectiles are too small, too fast. They're not triggering the shield response in time." In the Council chamber, the Verthari historian whispered in something like admiration, "They found the gap." The RUL delegate's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish in bad water. One human ship, a patched cargo carrier with crude weapon mounts, drifted into a Dominion cruiser's path. It didn't fire. It simply released a cloud. Thousands of tiny objects spread into space like glitter. "Minefield," the Alterian strategist said, and his voice was grim. The Dominion cruiser advanced. The mines detonated, not with elegant energy bursts, with metal and chemical violence. Fragments shredded hull plating. Atmosphere vented in a white plume. The cruiser's lights flickered, then went dark. In the Council chamber, a Zenthara delegate chimed softly. "That is so primitive. And so effective," the High Chancellor said. On the Dominion bridge feed, the Admiral's voice went quieter. "Withdraw," he said. It was the first time he had used that word. A subordinate snapped her head toward him. "Admiral." The Admiral's eyes stayed locked on the tactical display. "We are not prepared," he said. "Our intelligence." He stopped, because the humans transmitted something across open channels. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even military communication. It was music. Loud. Aggressive. Rhythmic. The translator stuttered, unable to classify it. Underneath the pounding noise were human voices, shouting in joy and anger and something that sounded too much like laughter. On the Dominion bridge feed, officers froze. A Dominion technician flinched as if the sound had struck him physically. "Turn it off," the Admiral snapped. They tried. The signal kept bleeding through. A human voice cut through the noise, clear, amused. "Hey," it said, as if speaking to a neighbor over a fence. "You picked the wrong planet to mess with." Then, over the channel, the Council chamber heard something that made the older species shift in their seats. Human laughter. Not nervous laughter. Not relief. Not denial. This laughter sounded like someone who had already decided how the story ended. In the Council chamber, the Novari delegate whispered, "Why are they laughing?" The Alterian strategist's hands trembled slightly as he folded them tighter. "Because they are no longer afraid," he said. "And because fear isn't what keeps them alive." The High Chancellor leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the live feed. "What keeps them alive?" he asked. The strategist didn't answer with a speech. He nodded toward Earth. On the hologram, the planet rotated slowly, indifferent and beautiful. And around it, thousands of human ships moved like angry insects defending a nest. "Home," the strategist said. That word carried more weight in the chamber than any treaty. The Dominion Admiral's bridge feed showed him watching his fleet bleed. Ships hit mines they couldn't detect in time. Destroyers lost engines to kinetic swarms. A battleship's weapon spine went silent after a small craft rammed it and detonated, turning itself into shrapnel. The humans weren't trying to capture. They weren't trying to negotiate. They were trying to make the Dominion leave. Or die. "Admiral," the subordinate said, voice thin. "We are losing ships faster than projected." The Admiral's jaw tightened. "We are still superior," he said, but it sounded like he was reciting doctrine to keep panic from touching him. A Dominion officer shouted, "Boarding pods incoming." "Impossible," the Admiral snapped. The officer's claws shook. They're drilling through hull plates. Mechanical. The council chamber listened to that with growing unease. Mechanical drills. Not elegant tech. Not treaty band phase cutters. Drills. The kind of thing you used on rock. Or armor. The Dominion Admiral's face had changed now. He was still standing. Still commanding. But the smug performance was gone. He looked like a man who had expected a lecture and found a knife. In the council chamber, the Verthari historian's voice was almost reverent. "This is not a species that fights to win," he whispered. "This is a species that fights to make you regret starting." The High Chancellor turned his gaze from Earth to the chamber. "Council of Species," he said, and his voice pulled everyone back from the feed like a hook. "We have observed enough to know one thing." He let that hang. "Our assessment was wrong." No one contradicted him. Even the RUL delegate couldn't. The Novari delegate's voice trembled, but she forced it steady. "Then we should intervene," she said. "We should stop the Dominion." A dozen delegates murmured agreement, not moral, but pragmatic. A war between the Dominion and a hidden human interstellar defense network could spill. It could spread. It could ignite old rivalries. And if humans were what they now appeared to be, nobody wanted to be on the wrong side of their anger. The High Chancellor didn't answer immediately. His eyes moved across faces: old species, young species, empires, traders, scientists. Minds that had built civilizations on rules. He turned back to the hologram. On Earth's surface, the sensors showed something else now. Global communication spikes, civilians moving, power grid shifting, coastlines lit with sudden infrastructure. It wasn't panic. It was mobilization. The Dominion Admiral's fleet, for all its size, was now the smaller thing in the room. The High Chancellor's voice came low and cold. "Intervene how?" he asked. The Novari delegate opened her mouth, then closed it. There was no clean answer. If the Council attacked the Dominion would retaliate against the Council, not just humans. A wider war. If the Council tried diplomacy, the Dominion would stall, then strike. They always did. If the Council sent ships into Sol, they would be approaching a world that had just revealed it could hide thousands of warships in its own backyard without Council detection. "Observation Committee," the High Chancellor said, and the chamber's attention snapped to the dais. A senior observer, Methodist, ancient enough that her voice sounded like dried leaves, stood slowly. Her eyes were wet. "High Chancellor," she said, "Sol 3 has been classified safe to observe for 3 centuries." The words were simple, but the chamber reacted as if she had said, "We have been blind." "Safe," the RUL delegate repeated, voice strained. "How could it be safe if they have this?" The Methodist ambassador's throat pulsed. She looked tired. "Because," she said softly, "we assumed safe meant weak." The Verthari historian swallowed. "Safe to observe," he whispered, like he was tasting the phrase for the first time. "A label. A stamp." The High Chancellor's gaze sharpened. "Who made that classification?" he asked. The Methodist ambassador hesitated just long enough for everyone to notice. Then she answered. "The Council," she said. "All of us." Silence spread through the chamber like ink. A few delegates shifted their chairs. A few looked down at their hands. A few looked like they wanted to disappear into their own reputations. The High Chancellor turned back to the feed. On the Dominion bridge, the Admiral was shouting orders now. "Pull back to the system edge." A subordinate responded, terrified. "We cannot. They are blocking retreat vectors." Human ships were moving like predators, cutting off angles, forcing Dominion vessels into mined corridors, driving them away from Earth and toward open space. It was tactical. It was efficient. And it was personal. The Novari delegate's voice came out small. "They were watching," she whispered. The Altarian strategist nodded once. "Yes," he said. They were listening to every radio leak. Learning. Measuring. The Verthari historian's eyes fluttered shut and opened again, as if trying to process too much information at once. "And they let us believe," he whispered. "They let us label them." The High Chancellor's voice cut through the chamber. "Council," he said, "we must decide now." A dozen delegates began speaking at once, overlapping arguments, shouted protocols, urgent warnings. Intervention risks escalation. If humans win, they'll become a power. If humans lose, the Dominion expands. The treaties, the optics, the quarantine lines. The High Chancellor struck the platform with his hand. A single crack of sound. The chamber fell silent. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "Council law exists," he said, "because we have learned that the fastest way to start a galaxy war is to intervene in another species' first blood." He let that sink in. "The Dominion is a member empire," he continued. "Humans are not. Earth is unregistered. Our legal authority is thin. Our military certainty is thinner." The Novari delegate leaned forward, eyes bright with anger and fear. "So we do nothing?" she demanded. "We watch them burn?" The High Chancellor looked at her then, not with cruelty, not with dismissal, but with the weight of someone who had watched too many worlds die. "We do not interfere," he said. "We observe." The words hit like a verdict. The Novari delegates' hands tightened into fists. "Because we expect humans to die," she spat. The High Chancellor's gaze returned to Earth. "No," he said quietly. "Because we do not know what happens if they live." The chamber didn't breathe for a heartbeat. That was the truth nobody wanted to say out loud. A hidden human interstellar defense network meant one thing. Humanity was not a curiosity. It was a variable. And variables didn't obey the neat lines on treaty maps. The Verthari historian's voice came out hoarse. "High Chancellor," he said, "if humanity survives this, the Dominion will not be the only one to notice." The High Chancellor's eyes stayed on the feed. "I know," he said. On the hologram, Earth hung in the black like a jewel that hadn't asked to be admired. Around it, human ships moved with the frantic, purposeful speed of a species that had decided it would rather die than be owned. The Dominion fleet was still firing, still bleeding, still trying to impose order. But the human response wasn't ordered in the Dominion's way. It was coordinated in a different language. A language written in stubbornness, in improvisation, in the willingness to set your own ship on fire if it meant the enemy couldn't sleep. The council chamber watched, and in that watching, something subtle changed. At first, the delegates had leaned forward with curiosity. Now they leaned forward with the helpless attention of witnesses at an execution, except nobody could tell who was being executed anymore. The Methodist ambassador wiped her eyes with one trembling hand. "Safe to observe," she whispered again. "We were so proud of that label. It meant we could study them without risk." The Altarian strategist's voice was flat. "We studied their radio leaks," he said. "Their wars, their divisions, their entertainment, their violence." He nodded toward the feed where human music still bled through Dominion channels like infection. "And we concluded they were unstable," he continued, "as if instability is always weakness." The Novari delegate stared. "Isn't it?" she asked. The strategist finally looked at her. His eyes were tired. "Not when the instability is pointed outward," he said. On the Dominion bridge feed, an officer screamed, "Admiral! We have intrusions in our network." The Admiral's head snapped up. "Block it! We're trying!" the officer shouted. "It adapts." A Dominion cruiser on the tactical display suddenly rotated its weapons and fired into its own formation. The council chamber went still. "That's sabotage," the Verthari historian whispered. The High Chancellor's fingers tightened again. Humans weren't just fighting with ships. They were fighting with minds. They were turning the Dominion systems against itself. They were learning in real time. And the Council had labeled them safe. A young delegate, RUL, surprisingly, spoke with a cracked voice. "High Chancellor," he said, "if we do not intervene, and humanity wins, What will they think of us? The High Chancellor didn't answer with philosophy. He answered with observation. They will think, he said, that we watched. That was worse than hate. Hate was personal. Watching was cold. Watching was what predators did to see if prey was worth the energy. The Novari delegate's eyes flicked toward the hologram, and her voice dropped. Are we the predators? She whispered. The High Chancellor didn't respond. He didn't need to. The chamber knew. The official motion was drafted quickly. The legal language was clean. It had to be. Emergency Session Resolution. The Galaxy Council will maintain non-interference posture in the Sol 3 conflict. All member fleets will hold position. Observation only. No provocations. No assistance. No engagement. Vote, the High Chancellor said. Lights blinked on the consoles. Yes, 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 yes. A few no votes, small and angry and powerless. The motion passed. The Council chose to watch. The Council chose to let the Dominion and humanity decide their own fate. And somewhere in the deep dark of the Sol system, plasma lances and kinetic swarms continued to carve new history into vacuum. The High Chancellor exhaled slowly, then turned to the observers. Record everything, he said again. Every tactic, every transmission, every shift in their pattern. The Verthari historian's voice was barely above a whisper now. For study. The High Chancellor's eyes were on Earth, but his answer was for the entire galaxy. For understanding, he said. Because we have just discovered that safe to observe was not a classification. He paused. It was a mistake. On the hologram, a human transmission cut through the noise. Calm, direct, not addressed to the Dominion. It was sent on open frequency. It was for anyone listening. This is Earth, the voice said. If you're out there, watching, remember this. A beat of static. Then the voice continued, still calm. We didn't ask to be found. Another beat. We just refused to be taken. The channel cut. The council chamber sat in absolute silence. Not because they had nothing to say. Because for the first time in a long time, the galaxy's greatest collection of minds realized something simple and terrifying. They had built their peace on rules. And somewhere on a blue planet they had labeled harmless, 8 billion variables, were proving that rules only mattered when everyone agreed to follow them. The High Chancellor did not look away from Earth. He watched the Dominion fleet falter. He watched human ships move like teeth. He watched a world defend itself with the kind of unified rage only a home could create. And in his ancient voice, quiet enough that only the closest delegates heard, he spoke the last truth of the session. Observe, he said. Then, softer. And pray they never decide to observe us back.